Luisteraars, welkom terug by ons sit koppe bymekaar hier by Eden FM. Ek gesels vanaand met Sandy wat 'n body stress release practitioner en 'n lecturer is. Nou kon ek skielik nie die Afrikaanse woord kry nie. 'n Onderwyser. Hy leer mense om body stress release te doen. Sandy, what I found for myself been going for body stress release is I really don't care who the practitioner is. If I have a need, I just go into my list and say, who can help me 8 o'clock this morning? Because the technique works.
Yeah.
People are different and they have a different way in their interaction with people, but the technique works. And I've seen practitioners all over the country, you know that. If I go to Joburg, if I fly to Joburg, I find my practitioner there, tell him I just flew in. I want to prevent my body from accumulating the stress of sitting in the 2-hour flight. Can you please give me a release so that I can work with what's coming? So luisteraars, dit is 'n ongelooflike tegniek. En ek is so opgewonde dat ons hieroor kan gesels. Sandy, what do you want to tell us? What's on your mind? What?
Okay, well,
yes,
now that you mentioned finding practitioners in different areas, I'd just like to tell the listeners about the bodystressrelease.com website,
please.
Which is www.bodystressrelease.com. It's release, not relief. So just to make sure they get that right. But the web page has got a very nifty little search window where you type in your location in the country, and it will then bring up a list of practitioners near you. So the bigger centers like Cape Town, Johannesburg, Garden Route, Durban, you know, there's the Eastern Cape, Port Elizabeth, East London. Those areas have got a number of practitioners in them. In fact, we've got about 180 registered practitioners in the country at the moment. So there's a fair amount, but not nearly enough for how many people there are in South Africa. But you just type in your location and then it will bring up a list of people near you, closest to furthest. So it's quite easy to find a practitioner if you are in need. There's also, for the listeners that are interested, a very good book written by Gail Megacy. Now remember, Gail and Ewald Megacy were the founders of this technique. Sadly, they've both passed away now, Ewald in 2013 and Gail in 2021. But Gail wrote a book called Self-Healing with Body Stress Release. And that's also explains everything in great detail about how the technique works, a bit of the history behind it, and it gives some very interesting case studies so that people can then relate to things that either they or family members are experiencing.
So where do they get this book, Sandy? Also on the website?
I think you can order it off the website. I believe it's also available through Amazon.
Okay.
Otherwise, in the larger bookstores also do stock it.
Sandy, and who can go? How will I get to an age where I'm too old to go for body stress release?
Luckily for you, not.
What are the clients? Who can go?
Look, I mean, if we had to ask our practitioners for the youngest and oldest clients, I'm sure you would get from a couple of days old, even a day old, to 100 years plus, because this is the thing. It's so accessible because it's so gentle. Literally anybody can go. If somebody has had a procedure or something like that, we'd rather wait for that to settle down and heal properly before they come. Or an accident, you know, and obviously if somebody's been in an accident or something like that, they need to be medically checked before they are then sort of given the all clear to make sure nothing's broken or fractured or whatever the case might be. But then by all means they can come. Because we work gently, we're able to then be very careful over areas that are very sore. But it is really accessible for all people. And we do see newborn babies that have had obviously difficult births. It can help with the sleeplessness, the sort of colic sort of effects that babies have. And of course, the mothers also have a lot of physical stress, plus emotional. You can imagine all these sleepless nights and the funny positions of breastfeeding and all these new things that the moms have to do. sure the dads have some stress trying to cope with this as well.
Absolutely.
But then all the way through to toddlers who are learning to walk and have the falls and the, picking things up that are too heavy for them, and the young kids with their growing pains, the teenagers with all these stresses that they're subjected to, not least these massive school bags they have to carry on their backs, the young adults, all the way through, right up to retired elderly people that may be experiencing aches and pains as well.
Do babies have stress?
Can you imagine how stressful it is to be born? You're in this beautiful,
Talk
wonderful,
about it.
warm environment,
Talk
and
about
then suddenly you're thrust out into this harsh world that we're in. I imagine they do have some stress. And be it a natural birth or a Caesar, it's physically stressful on the baby as well.
Yeah. So it can also help to release that birth stress for the baby.
Yeah,
we forget
absolutely.
about the baby that experience
absolutely.
Stress.
And that's it. The babies that have had that sort of stress, they go. It's going to manifest in things like I mentioned. Babies that just won't sleep, babies that might not want to suckle, babies that are constantly crying. It could be that there is a lot of discomfort in their little bodies, and then it's possible that they can be soothed and eased off with the body stress release, because we're doing exactly the same thing we do to adults. We're just stimulating the body to recognize where the irritations are alongside the spine or wherever they might be, and then on its own to go and try and deal with that.
Oh, and isn't it beautiful, Sandy, to just see that baby's face when they relax?
Yeah, and that is wonderful. Sometimes babies sometimes can be quite noisy when you're working on them, but they do generally relax a lot. They do really sleep a lot afterwards as well. So, so that's great for the parents, because it must be really nerve-wracking if your baby just isn't settling down.
Yeah.
And to get them to calm down through something as subtle and as gentle as this is it's wonderful to be able to help them.
Yeah. You don't diagnose, Sandy. You said you're working alongside the medical field. It's not instead of the medical field. And
Absolutely.
what I also found is after an operation, I think I went to you, I can't remember, but after my cesarean, I went to you and I said to you, I think my body healed so much faster after the cesarean because I went for body stress release during my pregnancy. But it's alongside, it's never instead of a medical procedure, right?
Absolutely. We're not medical at all, and we cannot diagnose. We're not trained to do that. We do not treat people in the classical sense of treat, because that's the medical realm. So we work alongside all the other modalities to help the clients. And you'll notice I'd say the word client, not patient, because that's also not our scope of practice. Our scope of practice really is to assess someone's body for body stress, and then to release that body stress.
So simple.
It's so simple. But we're working with these incredible, beautiful, amazing bodies of ours. And that's where the magic comes in. When the body is stimulated to do what it's meant to do on a daily basis, it can sort so many things out on its own.
Please, Sandy, tell us about the Academy. I'm so excited. I wonder how many people know that it's not a national academy, it's an international academy, because it's the only place where you can study body stress release, and it's right there. Tell us about it, please.
Okay, so that is exciting. In fact, there are two places now. In 2012 and 2014, I think was the first year that it ran. Gail Megacy started a academy in England as well.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's more accessible to the European people. But the South African Academy is based in the beautiful village of Ronell, which is in between Wilderness and Sedgefield. And it moved there they started doing the courses in Cape Town in the early 1990s, late 1980s, early 1990s, yes. When it was a part-time course and done over weekends and after hours. But then in about 1996 or 7, they moved the academy to Ronell, to this beautiful building overlooking Lungvlei. So it's the most tranquil setting you can imagine. And at that point, it gained more and more and more momentum. It became a full-time course, an immersive 5-month course, and people started getting interested in doing this thing, even from overseas. So It's now practiced in 22 countries around the world, and
Wow.
people try it, they experience it, and they're so inspired that they want to do it themselves as well. So it's a 5-month course that's done here. The academy takes 24 students, typically, sometimes 25 or 6 per year, and it runs from the end of April, when we have our annual Body Stress Release conference in the George area, up until the end of September. And any typical year, for example, the students we have this year, we have 8 Dutch students, we have a Zambian student, we have a lady that's originally from Guatemala, and the rest are South Africans. But, you know, there usually will also be, last year we had a Kenyan, we've had Americans, Australians, New Zealanders, you know, from 20, there's even a lady from Iceland that does this.
Wow.
Which is incredible.
Wow.
So the Academy has trained over the years roughly 650 people. And it's been immensely well received in Holland, where there are almost as many people in Holland that do it as in South Africa.
Sure.
Mm.
No, it's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. And the course was originally run by Gail and Ewald Megacy themselves. And then over the years, they drafted in 4 people to do the lecturing as a sort of, what is the word, succession plan, in order to make sure that there was continuity. Yeah. One of them is Buti Turin, who's got a practice in Cape Town, and he commutes up and down. Another one is Mary Parker, who is another, also from Cape Town, has got a practice there, and she commutes up and down. And then Jeanette Gibbs from Wilderness is the third one, and myself. So the 4 of us work together, based on exactly the way Gail and Ewald set up the program and the course work. And it's our mission as trustees of the Body Stress Release Academy Trust to make sure it continues that way for as long as possible. And then the people that come after us will also have the task of making sure that the Body Stress Release course continues as it was intended originally.
That is absolutely wonderful to hear. And who can study it? Do you need to have studied at varsity before you can apply?
Not at all. So we've got people from all walks of life. The minimum requirements are a matric, and the applicant must be 25 years or older. And that's about it. You know, you get people with really wonderful hearts that want to make a difference in the world. And the fact that they don't have a degree, possibly, or this or that, shouldn't stop them. You know, this gives them opportunity to really make a difference.
Wow, that's amazing. I just want to hear your thoughts on, you know, what I discovered through my own experience with body stress release is that I never thought about how many times did I fall since I was born. You mentioned earlier a young child just falling flat on their bum, you know, and I don't think we realize how stressful that is on the body. So if you accumulate all those falls and what it does to the body and how the body wants to protect itself. And, you know, when I started to think about that, I realized that is how you accumulate stress, through simple things. Is that, do I remember correctly, is that the mechanical stress?
Yes, absolutely.
The
mechanical stress.
So a fall is quite stressful, and you get a lot of people, also for the elderly. I've fallen and I found it very stressful. So what I do now is, if I had a fall, even if it was a small fall, I go for my release immediately before the body can set in. But I think for all elderly people, you know, it's quite stressful for them when they fall.
Yes, it's scary. A, it's scary, and B, it hurts, you know, so it is a stressful on a couple of levels. But the way that you address it is perfect, you know, because what we find is that the sooner the muscles are worked on to release the stress, the sooner the stress comes out. The problem is, I think that we often leave something hoping it's going to go away.
Yes.
And if it doesn't go away, and even if it does go away, often it's just being driven deeper. So we're not as aware of it, but the original problem is still there. And the body's still going to be protecting that. So sooner or later, it's going to come out and manifest as some sort of symptom or effect or ache or pain. And what you mentioned earlier, the kids, they are very resilient. They bounce back very quickly, and very often they'll heal very quickly. And even though the body never, ever, ever forgets how to heal itself, it might do it a bit slower if you're 99 compared to when you were 9.
Can you tell us briefly again the common symptoms, like those needles and pins that you get in your hands, or the frozen shoulder, or transferred pain? Is that the correct verwijste pain? The referred pain.
So this is the interesting thing, that typically these things start off as a sore back or stiff neck or whatever the case might be, and then the tension works its way deeper and deeper in, which then will cause pain. Often it will be pain. It's irritation to the nerves. They get overstimulated, and you get either local pain where the problem is, or it gets referred down that nerve pathway to wherever that nerve goes to. So, for example, from the lower back, it might go into the hips. It might go into the buttocks. It might go into the leg. It might go to the knee, the ankle, right down to the toes. Now, remember that the stimulation or the irritation to the nerve could cause pain, but it could just as well cause pins and needles. So that you may have those effects as well. If the tension or stress is stored in the neck, then that will affect the shoulders, the shoulder blades. And people often get knots in their shoulders or shoulder blades, and that's very often coming as a referred effect from the neck. It can affect the elbows, hands, wrists, and people often will get a pins and needles effect in their hands when they're sleeping on one side or another side, or if they have had a previous whiplash injury, or if they do a lot of work with their head forward, if they're reading a lot for work, or a lot of computer work with their head forward, which can put tension on the front side of the neck. But then you also get the irritation to the nerves going back into the skull. Pressure on those nerves can cause headaches, can cause anything like irritation to the sinus areas, the eyes, the ears, the jaw. So it's very far-reaching what the negative effects of stress overload on the body.
Thank you so much, Sandy. Is there a last word? And before you give the last word, maybe just mention the website again. I think it's a very easy website, but you do it so well. Just mention the website again, please, and then a last word to the listeners, please.
Okay, so the website is www.bodystressrelease.com.
So easy.
That's easy, and once you found it is a hopefully very user-friendly website as well. There's so much to say to listeners. It's been a pleasure to be with you tonight, Ronell. I'm so glad that you asked me to do this, and it's wonderful to see you again after all these years. But there's just so much stuff going on in the world at the moment, and I think a lot of us take on so much stress when it's not always necessary. So the saying I like to quote is, "Don't stress about something you can't change." There's so many things in our lives we can change, and that we can do better or look after ourselves better or our family members better, whatever the case might be. But stressing about things we can't change really just overloads your own system and adds to the stresses that are already there. So hopefully that can be a parting word.
I agree with that. Thank you so much, Sandy. Luisteraars, daar het julle dit. Moenie stres oor iets wat jy nie kan verander nie. Verander dit wat jy wel kan verander en besluit wat is binne jou vermoë. Geniet die aand verder en 'n lekker aand.